Cindy, welcome to Free Play Florida.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for dropping everything at the last minute and saving our bacon. And
I had to yell at a lot of people, but I think I'll be okay.
And
I need that now. Give me my car.
I think Bruce owes you lunch, clearly.
Bruce,
that guy.
Oh, he owes me more than lunch, yeah.
So we're here to talk about TRON, everybody, but I kind of thought it would be good to get some context as to how you arrived at TRON. And reading up on you online, there's a phrase that comes up constantly, and it's from Catholic school
to Caddyshack.
To Caddyshack.
Yeah.
So could you give us just a sort of potted history as to how you got from a young Cindy through to arriving at Caddyshack?
You got like an hour?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Good. 12 years of Catholic school. It was actually a very good education. High school was great, but very, very shy to the point where I had a stammer. And even though I actually was a tech going in, I tested into the Illinois Institute of Technology with a grant, a free ride. But going there, it was 4 girls and all guys. I made a hard left and went to Northern Illinois, where I was put into a speech class. I was a terrible speaker, but a good writer. And it was the first time somebody ever said, even though I was a straight A student, you're really good at this, you should do it. So I got into broadcast. I came into college with a stammer, came out in broadcasting. I was in broadcasting for 5 years. I did everything. I did the weather really badly in Rockford, Illinois. When I say badly, I would switch the oceans. Okay, so after my show, the director would come down with a Sharpie and write Atlantic, Pacific, because I would just, my thing was just keep talking. I said, how are my ratings? Good, get out of here. So, and I ended up doing morning drive in radio in Chicago. And morning drive in Chicago at the time was the second largest market in the world. And that's as high as, you can just about go. And I was making $135 a week. And they said, we can't put you on camera. You're the voice on the radio. We don't want you on camera. And I said, the hell with you. I got to stop saying naughty words because there are young people in the audience, so I apologize. I said, the heck with you guys, and I went to LA, and I just didn't tell anybody I couldn't act. And got an Irish Spring commercial almost immediately that paid my bills. And 8 months later, I got Caddyshack. And I read the script, and I went, they'll never cast me. I didn't date until college. And I was, I didn't know, I said, I'll never get this job. So I had nothing to lose. So I was really good at the auditions because I didn't care. It was only at the end that I realized they were going to cast me, and that was a challenge. And from there, I was in a comedy class. When I got to LA and knew I couldn't act, I started taking, I went to my agent's closet, and I pulled out the resumes and photos of people I recognized, flipped them over and saw where they studied, and I studied there. And one was a comedy improvisation class, which saved my life, because as a disc jockey, you do all the talking. And if you're working with someone who's improvising, like I did in Caddyshack, you have to learn to work with the other person. It's like music. Comedy has a rhythm and a meter, and don't try to steal a scene like somebody like Chevy Chase. He's very powerful. So while I was in that comedy class, I was dating some guy I met, nice guy, Larry Anderson, and Larry took me to lunch because he got this job in a cartoon. And I was listening, I remember it really clearly. We were at the Chronicle restaurant in Venice, California, and they were talking about the cartoon, and I was eating my salad. And I didn't work for a while after Caddyshack because I went head-to-head with the producer over something that had nothing to do with my job. And, some things aren't worth it. And so I didn't work for a while. He threatened me with all the usual threats and made good on him. And I didn't hear a lot until all of a sudden Disney came calling, which is odd following up on Caddyshack. And I went in, and I was on camera, and they put me on with Jeff Bridges, and they saw how we were together, and Jeff's a great actor. And I really never understood what was happening. What happened was that cartoon that guy was in was TRON. They took it to Disney afterwards, turned it into CGI, split his character into 2, which was TRON and Flynn, and my friend Larry was out and I was in, and I didn't realize it until many years later. I saw him about 10 years ago. I said, was that TRON? He goes, yeah, that was Tron. And I never took an actress to lunch again. So I got it because I had lunch.
Got it. Okay. And
It was either me or Deborah Harry.
And walking into something like Caddyshack, surrounded by these giants of comedy at the time, how was that for you? Just to kind of walk into that environment?
You can't think about it. You don't think about that. I really, really do look at my work. I mean, I worked for my dad through high school in a factory, wiring and soldering circuit boards for Arctic Cat snowmobiles. I know what it's like to, work hard and get up early in the morning and do a job. This is work, and I treat it as such. So when I knew I was going to work with these guys, I stopped watching anything they did, just so I wouldn't have that level of intimidation. I wanted to walk in fresh, take a look at them, and do my job, and that's it. So, and then of course Caddyshack, the script was, there was a lot of improvisation, so it was a good thing, that I paid attention to where I was and what I was doing.
Right. And would you say, as your first feature movie, that was a great grounding for what was to come? Or not?
Believe me, they'll never do a Caddyshack again.
Okay.
You've heard all the stories and the rumors about, it was 1979. It was a different place and time. So everything you heard about it, about the improvisation, about the all-night parties, it's all true, and more. That's what, we were lucky we got anything done. I have no idea how that film got done. Okay. Actually, I can tell you, when they got all the film back, there were brilliant little vignettes that didn't cut together. So the entire gopher sequence was shot after the fact. The original story was about the caddies. That was gone, and they shot a gopher sequence and threaded that through the film. That's how they did it.
Yeah. I read a few things last night, which I probably shouldn't be raising here, about how the movie was made and the fuel of the movie.
Everybody was high every day.
Right.
But the truth is, everybody was. There were two people who weren't, and they just stood out because, But the truth is, one of the people we all love the most, Doug Kenny, the producer, the writer, Harvard Lampoon, National Lampoon, one of the writers of this. He was Stork in Animal House. Brilliant guy. We all loved him. There was, within a month after the release of Caddyshack, passed away, fueled by substance and a few other things, and it broke everybody's heart. So I've got to tell you, it's not, they'll never do anything like that again. On the other hand, we were doing a lot of other things they will never do again. For example, it looks like the state of Florida gave us the keys to the kingdom because we shot in 3 different counties, from what I can tell. They mined the golf course with gasoline. I've got 1,700 photos. I got the rights to 1,700 photos behind the scenes. You can see a pump pumping gasoline into the and you can see the picture of the 3-story fireball with tree limbs on fire blowing past camera. Literally. And I was sitting there with the editor who took these photos. I said, Bill, why is there a piece of plexiglass in front of camera A? He goes, because you never knew where the golf balls were going to go. I said, well, what's in front of camera B? He said, you see that little piece of carpeting? And it was trial by fire. You had to stay on your feet, you had to pay attention, you had to get there and do your job. Even though all the silliness was going on, believe me, it was a job, and we all took it very seriously. So. And
is something going to be done with those photos? Do you have plans for them?
Something to be done with explosives?
With the photos.
Yes, there's a book, a coffee table book, and every single photo is copywritten, numbered. It's laid out, and now it's a question of I need a lawyer to talk to my lawyer.
Fantastic. That's great.
If you get my drift.
Right. So I figured a good place to start with
TRON
would be this guy.
Stephen LISBERGER.
Steve LISBERGER. So it was obviously Stephen LISBERGER's vision very early on.
Completely so. He was so far ahead of his time.
I just wonder if you could perhaps tell us a bit about Steve, kind of when you first got into the project, what your perception of what he was trying to do was.
I said, Stephen, I'm a tech. I don't know what I'm talking about. If I don't know what I'm talking about, how is anybody else going to know what I'm talking about? And he said, the movie's not for them. I said, well, maybe they won't come to the movie. He goes, I don't care. He was a purist. He had theories. There are some spiritual themes through it. Where Caddyshack is a lifestyle, the fans of TRON, to them it's almost like a spiritual, it's a religion. They take it very, very seriously to heart. It means a great deal. It's not just a good time. It means a great deal to people. Yep. And I don't know if everybody appreciates, I do, because people will come up to the table and tell me, I got into computers because I saw that movie when I was a little kid and I got inspired. And it really, to think that you did something that had such an influence over time means a great deal. It's very important.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. And just sort of one of the things to talk about, Stephen, a bit as well. I tried to animate this, which I've done across 2 slides. So the whole look and feel of Tron is clearly down to Steve's vision. And it's sort of getting from starting from a picture like that.
Is that up behind us?
To a picture
Can you guys
like
see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this, could you talk to us a bit about this process, if you can, in layman's terms, about how that became that?
Well, show the first one? The black and white. Can you show
That's
the black?
the next one. Yeah.
Okay. Everything was shot in black and white. The old Panavision cameras from Lawrence of Arabia. It was not green screen or blue screen, because remember I did the weather badly. I mean, I know it was shot in black and white. It was in a giant, sound stages are giant warehouses. Big, huge, empty giant. And this one was empty. Everything was painted black. So then to get to the first one, the one before, can you go backwards?
Yep.
To go to that. So all the black lines on us, what happened was, and I only know this because I talked to the lighting guy who did this, they put a diffuser, or actually had a hand do every, now they had something like 360,000 codoliths. A codolith is a piece of film. For those of you who are young, film is something we used to put in cameras. And these pieces of film were this big. That's a codolith. Obviously, Kodak had something to do with it. And they had a hand work each one and put a diffuser on every black line that was on the black and white photos. A diffuser would go there. And because there was shining light through it, it made it glow. And that's how you made it glow. And then there was a lot of hand animation and hand painting, and just took each individual one in this universe, took layers. I heard some of them were layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of work. It was unbelievable. But can I tell you something? Blown up on a big screen in HD, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's really beautiful. People talk about how the technology is so much more advanced now, but that's like denoising a photo. Do you guys know it? It's good, but it doesn't have the heart and soul and grittiness of work. There actually is something called movie magic. When you put a brilliant lighting guy together with a brilliant sound guy, with a brilliant animation guy, with a brilliant designer. Mobius designed our costumes. Sid Mead designed the backgrounds. I mean, we had the best of everybody working on this. And to do that, that's where the magic, and you never know how it's going to turn out, because you get there on that day and whatever happens, happens. That's the magic. You put the right elements together, it either turns out beautifully or it's forgotten. By the way, both Caddyshack and TRON tanked at the box office. But 40 years later, here I sit.
And this is one of the interesting things about TRON, I think, is the film we see, as per that picture, is this sort of glorious visual treat.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
And yet, in order to make it, you guys...
That's what it looked like originally, yeah.
You guys were dressed in black and white, filming in black sets with no visual clues. And so how was that when you're...
Go back to that colored picture, and I'll tell you what happened that day. Because I stopped asking. It was like Caddyshack. The script was, same thing with TRON. I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter, because I don't know what I'm saying anyhow. I'll just you look into the other actor's eyes, and you find the reality somewhere there. Okay, this particular day, I walked in, and Stephen LISBERGER said, okay, you're on the Solar Sailor, you're crossing the Game C, Morgan, you're flying it, go ahead. And I just said, what? There's nothing here. There's no Solar Sailor. There's no Game C. There's nothing. What the heck are you talking about? He pointed to something that looked exactly like this, except it was a little higher. It was a riser, just a little bit higher and a little bit bigger, not much. And then there was one of these, exactly like this, except it had black felt on this. This was a Solar Sailor. This is how I was flying it. And I said, again, there's nothing there. There's nothing. He goes, just do anything. And you can't lie to the audience. That's really important, because if you lie, they know. So I had to see something. So in my mind's eye, I saw, because remember I used to be in broadcasting, I saw a soundboard. A soundboard wasn't always digital. We actually had potentiometers, and we had, slides, and we had things we actually had our hands on to do. And in my mind, that's what I saw, a soundboard, and that's what I was running that was propelling this thing forward, because there was nothing there.
I made the connection in my mind between your earlier career in broadcasting and how you executed Tron. So in broadcasting, you're not really necessarily seeing a live audience, you're talking into a microphone.
Yeah, but the great thing is you can do anything,
Right. But I guess you had to sort of project what the audience...
Well, in that case, in broadcasting, it's like you don't think I'm talking to hundreds of thousands of people, you're talking to one person. Because that makes it very personal. And I mean, like I said, you can do anything behind the mic. Everything's programmed now. You can't screw around. You can't choose your own music. I was ripping wire copy and reading the news. I mean, I was doing it all myself. And now you don't have that leeway. Everything's programmed. I remember one day my boss came in, and I got a letter, and it was, I mean, this is back in the 70s. There was a show called Beretta, and Beretta had a parrot. And the parrot wanted to come on my radio show. I thought, that's hilarious. I think this is funny. And my boss said, parrots don't talk. I said, really, Terry? I know parrots don't talk, but because it's behind a mic, I can do anything I want and pretend the parrot's running up, And he said, no. I said, okay. If I ever give you an okay, be careful, because I got something in mind. Because at that point, from that day forward, every time I did a news broadcast, at the very end was, and today's animal segment is... Now, the people of the city of Chicago and broadcast area didn't know what I was up to, but they knew I was up to something. So they were in on the joke. They knew I was screwing with my boss. So.
That's cool.
But as far as Tron, the connection, that was in the moment reality. This was an alternative reality that I had no frame of reference for. So the difficulty was multi-tiered. And the only thing that was real is looking in the other actor's eyes, because there was nothing to go by. And best one to work with, David Warner. And I was worried about this thing, because he's going to tell me I'm going to die. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm dying. When David Warner tells you you're going to die, no acting is required. You know you're going to die. I mean, it's real clear. He's a slight man, but really powerful. So he was, and Barnard Hughes was also lovely. Yeah, oh yeah, Dave, look at that face. I mean, you're going to die? Okay, I'm going. So, but yeah, the only reality we had was right here. Whereas in radio, I could create whatever reality behind the microphone.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to go back a second.
You're good with that thing.
So this shot, you were talking about these codoliths.
Yeah.
These
pieces of film this big.
There's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, about them being sent abroad to some students to actually do the.
I wouldn't say students. I know they were sent overseas, and there were 360,000 of them, and there were layers upon layers to work with.
Could you share the story of the?
From what I understand, when they sent him back, I was talking to. Who was I talking to? Oh gosh, it was one of the art directors who did a panel, and he said all he could hear was yelling and crying, and he could hear things being peeled apart, because apparently they sent him over and they hadn't been put on drying racks. They weren't dry. So Disney sent a special plane, built special boxes, because these things could collapse. The weight of them, just the weight of them, to get them, and they'd had to redo so much to send it over, because they're that big. This has never been done. It's like brand new territory. Well, both Caddyshack and the TRON. Brand new territory, nothing's written. You got to go in there, be fully aware, and just do it right the first time.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. And I just wonder if we could talk a bit about some of your co-stars.
Sure.
Clearly, a good place to start would be Jeff Bridges.
Wonderful guy.
I mean, I've just got the word here, intimidated. Jeff Bridges.
Not intimidating at all.
Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Did you not go in with some sense of apprehension that might?
No, I went in going. I remember seeing him in King Kong with Jessica Lange, and I said, "Why would such a beautiful girl go with that hippie? He's got long hair." Until you meet Jeff, and Jeff's so affable, so lovable, so clear. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, people who are really good at what they do make it so easy. And it was a joy to work with. Really, really easy.
Awesome, great. And one
scared the hell out of me.
One of the sort of scariest villains I remember as a kid.
He's a wonderful villain. I remember, on the plane, on the way to go do Caddyshack, I remember watching Time Bandits.
Okay.
And he was in Time Bandits. I had no idea I would be, but you can't think of the person you saw in a movie when you're looking them in the eye for a film. You have to be thinking, if you're paying attention to this, you're not doing your job. You got to look right at that person and be in that moment.
Great. And of course, Bruce.
Bruce, who was going to be here today, who we all hope is okay, you know, right now, because clearly nobody knows. I've been in those fires; they're much worse now, and you know, we all hope. Bruce made a great TRON, you know, because he always looked good, always knew his lines, showed up. It's funny, each of us found, Jeff, Bruce, and I each found ways to keep our energy level high, because again, you're in a big black warehouse, sensory deprivation tank, and when the camera's ready, you have to get up to 80% performance level, 180% performance level. So I was listening to my Walkman. You'll have to explain what that is. And then Jeff was playing video games, and Bruce was roping folding chairs. I have no reason why, but he was roping folding chairs. He found something to keep him busy.
Okay. All right. How strange. The thing I've written down here is chemistry, and what strikes me watching TRON now compared to when I was, however old I was, 12 or so, was the clear chemistry between you and Bruce that really came through.
It's a funny thing. I mean, you can not see each other for a while, and that chemistry will just go back in. There was something about, we're both from the Midwest. We grew up about 30 miles apart, different backgrounds, different educations, but a sensibility of it was almost like a family thing. We were on the same wavelength in a lot of ways.
And arguably even more remarkable how that came out through the film with the way it was shot. That you know, it's black and white. To your point, you're looking just into each other's eyes.
Right.
And it's just great how that finally sort of came out through.
And and that's the only place you can find that reality, because, like I said, nothing there.
Right. Okay. We are at Free Play Florida. We are here for video games and pinball. I stumbled across these pictures on the web of.
Cool.
A young Bruce playing Stern Scramble
That's probably on
the
the
set
set.
of Strong. It is on the set,
Yeah.
on the set of Strong. Presumably these games were there to keep you guys entertained.
Absolutely. Well,
something
entertain,
to do.
and also to get us in the mindset of the video game. And also it was a good thing to have something, that visual stimulation, because all day, I mean, understand, 6 weeks of sitting in a black room for 14-hour days, you're going to go to sleep. You know, it's sensory deprived. So this keeps the senses back up. It was very helpful.
Can you remember anything in particular that you played?
Space Invaders.
Okay, right.
Yeah, that was my game.
You need to show us your skills afterwards.
Yeah.
I also came across these.
That was at Madison
that.
Square Garden.
Right.
I did the press tour for TRON, and that was the last event.
Okay, and this was a high score competition.
There's David.
Yeah, there's David. For you arcade nerds, you notice the viewing screens on top, which were released by Midway, so that allowed people to watch the game without
Cool.
without looking over people's shoulders.
I see that picture all the time. It looks like I need better lighting or some kind of weird makeup.
Okay. So it's kind of Tron's legacy, if you'll pardon the pun.
No.
I remember going to see Tron at the cinema, being taken by my parents, who I think they were expecting the traditional Disney movie, right?
This was Disney's first grown-up movie.
And I distinctly remember my father saying to me after the film, it was kind of okay, and off he went. Nothing really stuck with him, but it stuck with me. And
Yeah.
It kind of strikes me that people of a certain age.
A lot of people, it hit them dead on, right in the heart. And a lot of other people went, you're right.
Yeah, cool, good. I guess I'm going to turn it over to you guys. If you have questions for Cindy, we'd love to hear them.
I understood that TRON didn't do it domestically, but what about overseas? I mean, when I was a kid back in Brazil, I remember the movie was heavily hyped. So I wonder if it did better overseas.
You're probably right. I mean, I heard that it went, it did do well globally. I even had somebody come up to me and tell me a story that I find hard to believe. he was somewhere in Asia, like literally rural area. Somebody came by with like a truck, set up a little screen, and he saw it there. And from what he described was like a rice paddy, and he saw it there. So globally it did well, but where it really did well, I remember when I was in college, I said, how do you know something is good? I mean, how do you know? I mean, who knows? And they say when it stands the test of time, when it can cross cultures, and you don't have to explain it, when you just get it, because it taps that human element. And that's what it had. For all of its flaws, for all of its different things, it had a human element that you can't do with animation alone. It has to be there. Because, and someone said, well, aren't you afraid of computers taking your job? I said, oh no, I can do something computers can't. And they said, what? I said, I can make mistakes. And that's where my most interesting work is, the mistakes.
Thank you.
So you talked a little bit about, what was it, how 6 weeks or so of actually making the film in this kind of, black environment. What was it like when you actually saw the movie finished for the first
Terrified.
time?
I was like, oh my God, what the heck is this? It went from sensory deprivation to sensory overload. I remember going to see it, and and on a big screen, and I was like, oh my God, this is too much. What the heck's going on? It was overload. Because when we were in it, there was nothing. We just created it. But I really, it's hard for me to watch my work anyway. Always has been. But I had no idea. I had no idea what to anticipate. And I'm so thrilled that Steven, and you gotta give Steven LISBERGER credit. He held to his vision. He wouldn't back off of it one little bit. And you know what? He was right. Don't tell him I said that.
And you had no sense of what the movie was going to end up being.
No, that's what I mean. I had no
Visually.
idea what was going to happen. I mean, when he said Solar Sailor Game Sea, I said, I don't know what and he showed me Sid Mead's graphics of a Solar Sailor. I go, okay, so it looks like that, and it's going over there. And I remember one day, Steven said, you guys are looking in 3 different directions. Now we're in a riser, and we're looking down at the game sea. There's nothing there, it's a floor. And I remember from my broadcast days, I remember it's so simple. I said, see that roll of tape? Take a piece of rope and drag it across the floor, and we'll look at that. Just give us an eye line. The real simple stuff. But yeah, it was no way to anticipate the way it turned out.
So Cindy, was when you took the TRON gig, was it literally, this is going to pay my bills, and it's a job, as opposed to I can see the vision and the.
I couldn't see the vision. I couldn't see the future, but I was thrilled that I was working for Disney. I was thrilled. I called my dad, and I said, Dad, I got a movie for Disney, and I'm going to make X amount of dollars, and isn't this great? And my dad, true to the job, said, that's great, Synth. When are you coming home?
Awesome. Right.
So there was a grounding element I had in my family. So yes, it's a job. It's a good job, and I loved it. And you put everything you got into it, because that's why you're there. And then, then you go home.
Fantastic.
This is a stupid question, but what would you listen to on your Walkman during
I
shooting?
remember I was listening to Electric Light Orchestra, and Bruce came over and listened and goes, this is bug music. And I don't know what that means, but I remember he called it bug music, ELO or whatever I had played on the radio. And what's weird is that Journey had a song in Caddyshack and in TRON. Any Way You Want It is in Caddyshack, and in TRON it's Only Solutions. What's the name of the one? Oh, come on, you guys saw TRON. I think it's Only Solutions.
I was curious, with the film not being the commercial success that
Right.
it was expected to be, because other people have commented, I remember it very distinctly, that the movie had a lot of hype, and it came out, and I had kind of a similar experience to Tony and walking out going, that was awesome, and I remember seeing adults walking out kind of
Scratching their heads.
not sure what I just, and that actually as a 13-year-old kid, I'm like, oh
But
no.
as a younger person, your imagination is wide open.
Exactly, and I loved it,
And
but
you're
I
able to
saw
take it
that,
in.
and it worried me, because I'm like, this film really needs to do great. I hope it does. And so, of course, it
Over
was,
time, it did.
well, that may answer my question, because I was curious, we did get Tron Legacy much later on. Was it the home market and that kind of kept that going as a viable property for Disney to consider, or
Was what?
the home market sales and VHS probably at the time and things
It
like
wasn't
that? What
sales,
kept
it was because Disney is very brand oriented, as I think we all know, and it was a piece of property. Once you own a property, which they did, you want to develop it in different areas. And people had been, the fan base grew over time, and they wanted to deliver it. So that's what it is. It's taking this wonderful property with amazing potential and developing it into something else. And I think that's what did it. The market's there.
I also wanted just to say thank you for coming here.
My pleasure.
Well, I'm sure it was very last minute and probably chaotic. It was
Chaotic.
Very gracious of you to do that. So.
Ask my friend who was on the phone with me when I was getting off the wrong freeway, heading in the wrong direction. She learned a lot of new words that day. But we're here now and happy to be here. This is so much fun for me. So thank you guys. Really, it's awesome. I mean, I'm still going, and they saw the movie and they liked it, and I'm still talking about it like 38 years later. This is like.
Not sure I need a microphone, but when I saw the movie, I was about 21, and did they edit too much out of it for it to connect? Because, and I don't know if you mentioned that, but you know, when you play the game, which I'm sorry you're not next to the 3 games that honor your movie out there.
There are
you know,
message boards everywhere. Put it on a message board.
There's a real quick, 3 seconds of grid bugs, and you're not really sure what that means in a movie. I mean, and is there a way to get the rest of the segments to view?
I believe Disney owns those, so they would have to want to put it together. There is a deleted scene called the deleted love scene that's beautifully done. Have you seen it? Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful fantasy scene. It's not really a love scene, but I think maybe it was a bit much for Disney since this was their first grown-up film. They weren't sure how far. I really don't know. It was in the film, and I heard one day they said, we don't want it. It's online.
It's on YouTube. Yeah.
Go online.
I guess,
Tron deleted love scene.
I guess, yeah, precisely. Yeah, it's on
Yeah.
there. And in that, you're wearing a spectacular dress.
It was a handmade beaded dress that was absolutely beautiful, and it's one of those wonderful animation things that it reminds me very much of the Cinderella Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo thing, where she spins around and this glowing outfit comes out of it. It's beautifully done. And I'm sorry Bruce isn't here, because I remember we did a panel a couple years ago. Somebody asked about the deleted love scene. He goes, I don't remember that. And I said, well, let me help you out, Grandpa. You walk to my apartment and you say this and I say this, and the fan wrote it down and put it online. And Cindy did his lines and her lines, the whole thing. But it was, it's beautifully done. It's really pretty. And
it's incredibly suggestive as well.
It is a bit.
The very last.
Yes, I know where you're headed.
Kind of running your finger down towards.
And there's a 10-year-old in this room.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. That's they could have cut it before that, though.
Right.
So
yeah, true. Yeah. This is in the computer world, right? Right.
So why wasn't it done in black and white, whatever?
It was shot in black and white, but after the film was taken in, then they hand painted it and they animated it, CGI or otherwise, and so when you see it, I think you'll understand.
Any more questions, guys? Any more questions for Cindy?
And okay, over there, okay.
There's a lot of works of art that we look at today with a modern point of view. We look back and we say, if they tried to make that today, it wouldn't have happened. There's no way they'd make that today. Do you think Tron is one of those things?
Absolutely. There was so much money, so much manpower, so many really brilliant people that got their hands on it and got involved in it and making this work. I mean, does anybody here know who Mobius was? Yeah. I mean, just a legendary French cartoon, comic book artist. I mean, just legends of the industry got their hands on this and made it. They would never be able to pull this many things together.
In the movie Singing in the Rain, there's a scene at the beginning where they show like the first talking movie, and they watch it, and then all the industry people who watch
they freak out and they go,
it's garbage, it's terrible, or whatever. what was kind of the internal, I guess, industry reaction when that movie came out? Because like you said, they wouldn't give them an Academy Award because they felt it was cheating and,
Well, I did the press junket, so I had to go city to city to explain what was going on. And to try to explain CGI, I might as well be talking to my cat. So what I did was I talked about The Wizard of Oz. And because that was something people could relate to. I said it's similar to that. When you're in one world, it's the black and white world. This is your life. You know people. But then when you go to Oz, it's brilliant. It's beautiful color. And suddenly there's some people you know that are kind of there. And I try to explain it that way. And I said, so if you're a computer programmer and you create something and put it in the computer, it has some of your tendencies, some of your feelings, some of your maybe that you're, so that when I'm on the solar sailor in this picture and I see Jeff Bridges get on, I made the choice to recognize him, but I wasn't sure why. Because that was a program created by my my programmer, my user, who was Laura. Right. And so when I was Yori kind of remembered somehow. And we really just were making this up as we went along.
And in fact, in the film, am I right in saying there's about 20 minutes of computer-generated?
I believe it's something like that. I'm not sure.
The rest of it is the traditional drawn.
There is traditional drawing. There's all. I mean, it just there were so much so much going on the fly. I remember walking by in the costume one day before they actually shot it, and somebody said, "Give me a Sharpie," and they started drawing more lines on my costume. I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead, draw away. I don't care." And it's just that's where the movie magic comes from. A lot of really good people who really knew what they were doing, putting it all together, and boom, there it was.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. No, that material is no thicker than this. There was no wetsuit. You don't eat lunch when you do a film like that. Yes, sir.
Short-lived
Bring
show.
Him Back Alive was
Can
some
you
of
talk
my
a little bit
best
about
work.
that?
Yeah, and it was a very short-lived series, 13 episodes, and very hard work. But can you imagine reading the call sheet for the next day? Lions, tigers, elephants, And in truth, they didn't belong on a set. They never should, because after working with them, they didn't belong there. I mean, it's not an activist thing. Animals will do what they are designed to do, so don't expect anything else. And eventually, most animals will, given the right trigger, will do that. So it was very dangerous work. I was only injured by one animal. It was a female elephant I was standing next to, and she hauled off and whacked me with her trunk so hard, she knocked my contact lenses out of my eyes. I think she knocked me down, too. And the trainer said, "Don't worry, she's not trying to hurt you. If she wanted to, you'd be dead." It's a matriarchal society, and she was just letting me know she was the big girl on the block, and she was boss. And I went, okay. But that's pretty much, but it was lovely. It was lovely to see the animals, and it was harder than you can imagine to do, because all the stunts Bruce was doing, I was doing in open-toed, high-heeled shoes, running up and down hills. On the weekend, I would go to get a pedicure, not for the polish, but to get the slivers and the twigs and the bruises were just everywhere, and and I was doing every single stunt the guys were doing. I remember one morning I came in 6 a.m. and they said, "You're tired at 6 in the morning," and a little goofy. And they said, "Okay, Morgan, you see that 100-foot cliff?" And I went, "Yeah." They said, "Okay, go up there, grab that rope, swing down like Tarzan, and hit this mark." I said, "And hit this mark? Are you crazy? What are you talking about?" And they said, "Do you expect us to wait for a stunt girl?" And I should have said yes, because that's their job. They're trained to do it. They want their work. And thank God I was supposed to look scared, because I was. I shouldn't have been doing that. Really, In fact, while we were on one of the sets, at one of the locations we used, there was a series called Twilight Zone that had a really bad accident while we were, and there was another accident on another set where the lead actor was playing with a gun with blanks. And I don't know if you remember that, but John Eric Hexum, wasn't that his name? And he was playing with it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, this is nothing." And that was the end of him. You can't, because it did have enough of a explosive in it to hurt, he was gone. So, this is really serious. You have to have all your wits about you at all times. So, but on the positive, how lucky to be able to have done something like that. How lucky. I feel. And to be able to come here and talk to you guys, feel really lucky. So thank you very much for coming. If you got any more questions you're afraid to ask and they're polite, come to my table. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Cindy.
Nice job. You made it interesting. Look at all those pictures. He's like a real professional.